Sorry, David Martin, SND.
Thanks.
2 minutes.
I'll be very brief, Chairman, because I think we're all going to focus on the same issues. I also have two sets of concerns. Firstly, I was pleased to hear the Commission saying that this is a treaty about enforcement and not about creating new regulations. But I would want an absolute assurance that in terms of the negotiations we are taking part in, the Commission will not come to us at the end of this process and say that we need to in any way change our existing IPR legislation within the European community. So I do insist that the current ACTA negotiations respect and reflect the current acquis communautaire and don't go beyond that level. The second issue is the one that both previous colleagues have spoken about, and that is the lack of transparency. A lack of transparency breeds suspicion, and that suspicion is going to grow the longer the negotiations go on. If we get to 9 rounds of negotiations and no detailed information is released, people will naturally wonder what has been talked about and what has been planned behind closed doors. Now, I welcome the fact that the summary of the key elements under discussion have been published, but it really is a sketch of what's going on rather than any detail, and in some ways leads to even more suspicion when you get that sort of note posted on the internet. So I would say to the Commission, I would hope they will join, not hope, I expect them to join the member states of the Union who have called for transparency. I know that the UK government has said that it has no problems with the ACTA documents being made public, and I'd like the European Union as a whole to push that position in the ACTA negotiations.
Thank you. Catherine Beard from the ALDE group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Commission for the information. However, I, like everybody else, I think, am extremely concerned about the secrecy surrounding the current negotiations. I understand that there's a consolidated negotiating text already in existence and has been since the middle of January, and that the deadline for comments on this, on the revised consolidated text, is the 12th of March, and yet we haven't seen anything. We know that the Council has it. We understand that lobbyists have already seen it as well. And I think, given that this is all about international cooperation and openness, it seems extraordinary that we haven't yet seen that. And has already been said that lessons should have been learnt from the SWIFT negotiations. Let's work in openness in the spirit of Lisbon. And I would like to ask the Commission, when are we going to see this text, please?
Thank you. Syed Kamal from the ECR.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we all recognise the importance of intellectual property rights. We may have different positions on the various aspects of intellectual property rights, but we all agree on the need for this issue to be addressed. However, I think we all also have concerns about how this will affect, and I was reassured by what the chap from the Commission said, but how it will affect civilians in their everyday life, as well as issues of border control, but also the issues of trade via the internet, when you can now buy so much over the internet and not, especially non-physical products over the internet that are subject to intellectual property issues. But I think the main issue, which I'd just like to re-emphasise, is the whole issue of transparency. If you do not have enough transparency, a vacuum will be created and rumours will fill that vacuum. And it doesn't help any of us if this vacuum is created and you allow smoke to fill the room. And therefore, the best way to address this is to give information, preferably accurate information rather than inaccurate information, but to give information and to explain as much as possible. And we understand there are always sensitivities in negotiations, but one is access to documents, and if access can't be given to documents, explain why they can't be given, rather than a blanket approach. Secondly, negotiating positions, and even if it's a top-level negotiating positions, what are our views on certain elements of the ACTA agreement, and what is being negotiated on our behalf. And thirdly, let's make sure that even though this is not supposed to be aimed at, I think the phrase was, people in their private life or civilians, we all know the unintended consequences of legislation. Let's make sure that what's being negotiated does not have an inadvertent effect on the ability of citizens across the European Union member states and companies to operate freely. Finally, one of the things that Mr Barroso said in the sort of discussions leading up to his renomination was the idea of better regulation and clearer regulation. And one of the things that I think we would all like to see, whatever our views in this Parliament, is better impact assessments. And what impact assessment or impact assessments will there be on the Commission's position, and also on any likely outcome of negotiations? Have we seen how different positions, how that will impact on industry and citizens right across the EU? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Carl Schlitter from the Greens.
Well, thank you. I have several questions, actually. For example, why do we have criminal measures here? Is this more serious crimes than environmental crimes? When countries infringe environmental legislation, why don't we have a criminal enforcement treaty for that? Wouldn't that be first-hand priority that really destroys everybody's life conditions? Why do we focus here first? That's my first question. The second is, you said this would change nothing in our law. Well, how can you be so sure? For example, or does it say in the treaty anywhere that you should have criminal sanctions, including imprisonment, if you film a film in the cinema, unauthorized, in a public cinema? Does it say in the treaty that this should be a crime with a criminal enforcement penalty, including prison? Or is that only a rumor? And is it a criminal offense, according to the agreement, to remove or disable technological protection equipment? For example, if I produce something, an open source document reader or open source film reader that can open any format of any platform, my purpose of doing so is just open software. I don't earn a single cent on it, but I do it. Is that a criminal enforcement penalty on me then, if I make a copy available of this software that can read anything, including protected works? Also, you mentioned that we are not going to chase people on the borders. Well, does the agreement say countries may exclude an individual person for a non-commercial purpose bringing goods? Or does it say parties shall exclude this? What is the wording there? And then also, what happens if you are suspected of infringement rights breaches? Does the rights provider get access to the confiscated material in order to judge if it's breached or not? And if that is the case, how can we assure that this is not used for illegal industrial espionage? And the last question is, you said that this will not in any way inhibit internet use. But does it anywhere in the agreement say that you should remove or disable access to content without a prior court decision on internet?
Thank you. This closes question time. I'll give the floor again to the representative of the Commission to answer to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many questions indeed, and I'll start by the substantive questions and then move perhaps to the issues of transparencies. There was a question by Mr. Caspary on what are the interests of the European industry vis-à-vis the American industry. Well, first of all, there's many industries which are intricated with each other, but I would say that all IP rights benefit to the European industries. We have perhaps a bit more, if you want, trademark than copyright compared to the US, so that kind of fine-tuning, but in Europe we have industries relying on geographical indications, on patent, on trademarks, on copyright, and on designs, of course, because we are the world leader in fashion, for instance. So I think it's fair to say that all industries, including European one, will benefit. There was a question on the transparency issues in general. It should be reminded that this is an international negotiations, and that the parties around the table have said that they do not want that their negotiating positions, which belong to them, want to be revealed. So we cannot